How are we doing, guys? Welcome back to another week with myself, Jamie Talks, for the wrap up. I'm just going to turn a light on. Let me get this a little bit more light. I'll be 1 second. There we go, that's better. Get the lights on. How are we doing, guys? How are we doing? Back with another week for myself, Jamie Talks, here for the wrap up. It's good to have you all in the chat. Let's get a few comments up straight away. Randy in here straight away, as always. All right, Jamie, hope you well. Look glad for the 3 points, but kind of felt numb about the game. It might be delayed. It might be delaying his inevitable dismissal. I would like to think we could start to get consistency. Not sure. Gill's coming in nice and early again. Uninspiring, no progress in team or individuals equals dead man walking for the next 18 months. That's an interesting take there, mate. Mark, I'm well. How are you doing, mate? Good to have you here. Sullivan will try and eke this out till the end of the season. Right, yeah. I mean, that's a good start to the questions, guys. I've got some comments for myself. I've actually come prepared this week. I've got a few questions for you all. So just to start things off, let's talk a little bit about the game. What were everyone's thoughts on the performance against Wolves? And there we go. There's the first one. Yeah. So what was everyone's thoughts on the game? Must admit, I felt it was an okay performance. I feel like it was at times a game that lacked real quality in the attacking third, and it was moments of brilliance from like Jarrod Bowen that took the game away from Wolves. And on another day, we would have had a few more goals, obviously, because Goose had a couple ruled out. But we've got to talk a little bit about Thomas Souček, however you want to pronounce his name. I'm probably butchering that. Apologies to any of my Czech Republic or Czechoslovakian listeners in the chat. But yeah, Big Tom did it again. Came up clutch in the big moments. And how many times are we going to say this about Thomas Souček? I think, he's writing himself, rightfully so, into the history books for West Ham. He's coming up with big goals and big moments over many years now. And it's he's proven to be an incredible signing for the football club. He's been pivotal for many, many years in our football club. And whether you want to admit it or not, because he might not be the most technically sound football player, he has been there in the big moments when West Ham have needed him quite a lot over the last few years. So I will tip my hat to Thomas Souček. And, there was lots of talk of players like him potentially leaving the club in the summer. But again, when we needed him in a Lopetegui side that apparently is, dependent on lots of ball playing, football players, midfielders that are, comfortable on the ball and competent in, using both feet and keeping the ball on the deck and whatnot. I must admit, Souček's come up and got Lopetegui out of trouble really with that header in the first half. So can never count Big Tom out, and I'm glad to still see him playing football in the club because he is a lovely fella. He was the first West Ham player that I actually ever interviewed myself personally, and he gave me a lot of time, and he was a really friendly bloke. So I'm good to see things are actually working out for him. Apart from that, obviously, I mean, the performance itself, I get lots of comments in there, and I will start flagging them up in a second, guys. But I think, we needed that win. Obviously, it was a 6-pointer at this point of the season. Seems like a crazy thing to say, but I was really impressed in certain aspects. I think it's probably one of our better performances of the year. We weren't amazing, but we did enough to win the game. And I feel like, as I said, we put the ball in the back of the net 2 extra times, but he was just offside. So Kudus that was. So I think there was plenty of positives to take away from the game. It wasn't a vintage West Ham performance, but we got 3 points, and that's a real determining factor. And I think it's probably the first game this season where I think we've got a win that we do. I would say that we thoroughly deserve it. I feel like personally, I've seen us beat Ipswich at home, and we just beat Ipswich on the day because we were better than them. They're not good enough to be in the division, so you can't read too much into that. But then I think about the Crystal Palace away game. they did more than enough in the first half to probably take that game away from us, but didn't take their chances. And how many times have we seen that this season? We then obviously blew them away in the second half with 2 quick goals and the game is gone. And then Man United, for example, the game that we won with the dubious penalty at the end of the game, in the first half, they absolutely dominated us and did more than enough to actually take the game away from us. But I feel like in this Wolves game, I would say we dominated large portions of the game, probably come away rightful winners of the game. So it was quite refreshing to go to the game. I was at the game this week. It's quite refreshing to come away from the London Stadium with 3 points after a relatively decent performance. And it was always going to be like a bit of a dogfight anyway, because both teams are obviously fighting against form, fighting up against it. It was being coined El Sakako before kickoff, and ironically, both managers are still in jobs. So yeah, interesting one. I think overall it was a good performance. You can't be too negative about getting 3 points when you're in a bad form, especially against a struggling side that probably need those points more than us. So yeah, overall I was relatively happy with it. So yeah, let's get your thoughts on here. Mark coming in with it was a pretty flat. It was pretty flat against the poor team. Robbo, good to have you here, mate. Got to ask what the fuck is going on with Füllkrug. No minutes at all in that Wolves game was quite surprising. That's a fair point there, mate. I'm not actually 100% sure what's going on with the Füllkrug situation. I imagine he was rushed back the game before and got a few minutes, obviously scored the goal. Maybe he's just not ready to be playing, but I wasn't necessarily unhappy with how he looked going forward at times in that game. So if we have a Füllkrug to come into that starting lineup, it could create another headache for West Ham, because obviously it means someone's got to miss out. And to me, I think, Bowen playing centrally looked okay the other day, because it allows us to play Somerville on the left and Kudus on the right. And I think allowing them three to kind of dovetail going forward, I'm not necessarily too worried about Füllkrug starting in that side, So I think it creates a problem having Füllkrug around. So I think for the next game, I wouldn't be against having Bowen central, Kudus on the right, and Somerville going on the left as well, because I think that's quite a dynamic front line. I've always felt like Somerville was the replacement for Kudus before Kudus leaves. So it'd be good to get him getting as many minutes in that West Ham side before he does eventually leave, because we all know it's going to happen. Randy, I felt like it was average, and we did get very fortunate with one of the Wolves penalty, Jamie, but take the win. Have to play better against Bournemouth, Brighton and Southampton coming up, mate. Exactly that, mate. I tweeted something straight after the game. It's, you can't scoff at 3 points at the end of the day, but that's 3 very valuable points for West Ham in a terrible period. Let's be clear, coming off the back of some poor results. So yeah, relatively happy to see us to get the 3 points, and obviously, yeah, like you want 6 points minimum against the upcoming game. Obviously, I think we've got Bournemouth Bournemouth away, Brighton at home, and then Southampton away, I believe. And then I think we've got Liverpool after that, then City. So the fact that we've got Liverpool and City after that, I think the next 3 games we probably need at least 6 points, maybe 5 points. Games like the Southampton game, you have to be winning that. Brighton are quite temperamental, but do play good football, and Bournemouth have been playing good football as well. So have to be beating Southampton, and the other 2 sides, if you get 2 draws or you sneak a win here and lose 1, I'd be happy with that. But 6 out of the 9 points is obviously, I think, a minimum to keep us, on some sort of momentum going into it. But obviously there's plenty of things to improve on. Here we go. Right. Mark, I think this is going to you, Robbo. Yeah, Robbo, I was thinking that Mickey missing the assistant. I couldn't believe it. He didn't get any minutes. We need to get him up and running. Yeah, potentially. I think, like I say, it's all dependent on the form of Jarrod Bowen, Kudus and Somerville. I actually quite like that as a front 3, and I think Füllkrug can come in and make an impact, but I think it's actually on a game-by-game basis as to when we would use them. And obviously, I don't think the front 3 necessarily writes itself every week. I think players like Jarrod Bowen and Kudus need to be in the starting lineup, and we've seen the dwindling effect that Kudus may have on the left-hand side. At the same time, I also think Somerville was showing some real bright sparks on that left-hand side, and you can see that he has still some ways to develop his game, but he's Kudus-esque in that regard. If anyone got bums out of the seats at the London Stadium on Monday, it was probably Crescencio Somerville. So when we talk about full crew coming into that and potentially disrupting that front three, I'm not necessarily against it, but I'm not necessarily for it either. I think we could go into the next game against Bournemouth with that front three of Jarrod Bowen and then rely on full crew, hopefully in the second half, and hopefully give him some minutes there, you know. Let's have a little look at some more comments then, guys. Right. That is a fantastic shout there, Troj. Can we talk about something other than West Ham, mate? You start the topic and I'll get talking about it. Right. Hey, Jamie. I saw no cohesion in the first half. Second half was not a good show either, to be brutally honest. We're showing 15th highest place table finish this season. You might be right, to be honest with you. But after the season that we've had so far, I refuse to turn my nose up against 3 points. And I don't even know if we had another manager, if they're really going to be able to turn that around rapidly and then bring anything from our season. I know we've still got a hell of a long way to go, but it's an interesting one. I think we haven't looked great all season, so to get 3 points is just nice to have that. And you would hope, in a way, that the manager can actually build on this, or if not, the manager will be gone sooner rather than later. So I hear you. I spent my load on West Ham, film done and nothing to add. Troj, speaking to the choir there, mate. Barry, how you doing, pal? Hi, Jamie, mate. Sorry I'm late. Was out shopping, but I hope you're all good. I'm all good, thank you, mate. Troj, talk to me about all the Champions League games. What are the scores going on right now? I haven't got my eyes on the footy. I think we should at least give Fulkrug a go for last chance soon, but again, don't think the club want to chance when we sell him. I don't know. Suchek and Bowen both respected Antonio when they scored. Kudus did his usual sit down, albeit prematurely, and no shout to Mickey tells you how West Ham Kudus actually is. Right, Stuart, that is an excellent question, mate, and that leads me on to my next question for you all. All right, here we go. What does the manager need to do to keep his job? Now, if we put this down simply, I'm eager to hear you guys, because I think we've all got quite damning opinions of Lopetegui rightfully so at this point of the season. But if he wins his next 5 games, does he buy himself more time in the job? And obviously, it seems like the board are somewhat reluctant to let go of him, and it looks as if though they are kind of longing for this to work. Obviously, there's been all sorts of rumours coming out of the club this week, whether it's Graham Potter coming in on a 6-month deal or if it's David Moyes coming back to the football club. There's 1,000,001 possibilities that are being reported by, people like ex-WHU employee or any other ITK of the like. So, for me personally, I think we need to see more from this football team. I think the performance we had on the weekend, whether the players were necessarily buoyed by the injury of Antonio or buoyed by a change in the approach from the manager, I assume it's probably the former. So we don't actually know if the manager's got the full strength of the dressing room, which is an interesting one, but he's going to need to turn that around sooner rather than later. But ultimately, I think you're only as good as your last game. You're only as good as your last performance. And ultimately, we got 3 points against the struggling Wolves side. We now need to obviously build upon that going forward in the season. And I think we've got some favourable kind of fixtures to do so. Like I said earlier, I think Bournemouth is a winnable game, Brighton is a winnable game, and Southampton is a winnable game. And quite frankly, we need to be getting points against those sides because we have Liverpool and Man City after that. It's a very tough end to the year and start of the year. It's going to be a baptism of fire. I'm actually going to the Etihad on the 4th of January. I'm making the journey up to Manchester. I've booked it off work already, and I am shitting myself because I'm going to spend 5 hours getting up to Manchester to watch us potentially get spanked. But that's the life of a football fan, isn't it? But anyway, I think to go back to the question, because I am rambling. Apologies, guys. I think the manager ultimately needs to win games. He needs to pick up points, and I don't want to necessarily slate us in terms of style of play and whatnot, because I can stomach terrible football and pick up results. I'm more than happy to do that. I just want to see us pick up results and be a little bit harder to play against. I think teams are enjoying playing against West Ham at the moment. And I think the players aren't necessarily buying into how Lopetegui wants to play, because it's obviously a complete change of style to what David Moyes is. And some of the players may not be comfortable and they may not be fully on board with the messaging of the manager. So whether that means the writing is on the wall sooner rather than later, that could be. But if we are going to have Lopetegui and make him work at the football club, I definitely think we need to have a bit of patience. And also we need to see some real performances start to change on the football pitch, because as of yet, other than the game against Wolves and a few bright sparks at times this season, I think from the Aston Villa game on match day 1 to the Wolves game, there hasn't been enough progression. I can remember I went to Dagenham and Redbridge in pre-season, and you can't read too much into pre-season, of course, but the expansive football we were playing on that day made me really excited for the season. And it was the first game I'd seen Max Kilman play for us, and he looked cultured. But I think the only real achievement from Lopetegui so far this season is making all of our better players look very average. And how much of the blame of that can be put on Lopetegui's plate, or is it just the players aren't performing? I think it's somewhere in the middle. So I think ultimately the manager, to keep his job, in order for that to happen, I think the players need to start performing and doing better. And I also think the manager needs to be a little bit more coy or better with the team selections, because I think he's got it wrong quite a few times now. So let's get some questions. Randy, that to answer your question, mate, that's me there, mate. So I don't necessarily want to see a head coach change just yet. I'd quite like to see if the manager can turn it around. He's won 3 points against Wolves. It'd be good to see if he can build upon that with Bournemouth. But if we get to the end of the Brighton game and we still haven't won any games, then I think it's time for a change. That's two games in. We've got Bournemouth, Brighton, Southampton. If we're not getting at least 6 points from those games, I really feel like we should be looking into a manager change, yeah. But for now, I think give him some time. Mark, putting it simply, win some games. Troj, putting it simply, win. Stuart, play more attractive attacking football. It's interesting, for sure. Kudus held up Antonio's shirt, didn't he? I actually missed it in the stadium. I missed so many things. I missed the bust up between Bowen at full time as well. So he might have done. I didn't actually see it though, mate. Don't matter if we got a bad defence and no midfield. If we win, no one cares, and games will be exciting. Imagine. Yeah, it'll be like Newcastle under Kevin Keegan. Losing 4-3 every game. Just trying to outscore the opponent. For Sullivan, nothing. He'll keep Loppe until he walks, and Loppe needs to get a run of wins playing good football and get us up the table, top 6. Then he can stay. Imagine, mate. Imagine us getting us to top 6. That would be a hell of an achievement. Randy, we need to see the consistency with the style of play. He needs to play his best 11 and not overthink the game. And 3, he will need to start repairing the fracture in the dressing room. Very well put there, my friend. I feel this season things are changing. Concession clubs taking the piss, top club bias, and a ref and VAR taking the piss. Modern football is making many switch off. It's very interesting that you say that. New company I'm working for is creating a new 6-a-side league because the modern game is becoming so disassociated from the fans. And yeah, it's interesting. I don't think you're necessarily wrong there, Troj. I think football is so much harder to consume because there's so much of it, and there's a million different subscriptions that you need nowadays just to see games. And 90% of them aren't even shown on a Saturday at 3 p.m. But you're still charged hundreds of pounds a month just to get access to a fraction of the game. So I hear you there, Troj, for sure. Plus getting all these players motivated as well. He's got a big job in his hands. I'm sure he did. Sterilisation of crowds. Is that in regards to the kit being lifted up? It might have been. Sterilisation of crowds. Yeah, you're not wrong there, mate. Keep formation, scrap his style of high line inverted winger. Stop Emerson and AWB going too high. Keep Alvarez in front of our back line. I don't know if we're going to see that, unfortunately, Daniel. Dagenham and Redbridge is more like a working class sport we all grew up and fell in love with. See, I think you're right there, Troj. Obviously, I grew up in, my early days were going to, West Ham games, Upton Park. Some of my early memories. I used to go to Roots Hall a lot as a kid because it was my local team in Southend. So that kind of throwback stadium is starting to be phased out of the game. But I think you look at the Premier League and there's kind of two types at the moment. You've got that kind of new sterilized kind of arena type environment for football games, whether that's like the new Tottenham Stadium or the London Stadium. And then you've also got the other side of the coin, which is like your Selhurst Park in Crystal Palace, which still feels like a visceral footballing experience from like the 90s, or like a Goodison Park, or like a traditional stadium, like a Craven Cottage, for example, like in Fulham, which is just like a beautiful place to go and watch football. So I hear you completely. Dagenham Redbridge is like, feels like completely different. So obviously it's I believe they're non-league, aren't they? I'm pretty sure they're non-league, or they're in League Two. I can't remember. They might have fallen out of the league, but either way, it feels like more of a throwback to football, a throwback to the original game that, you know, like people like myself and you kind of fell in love with, for sure. Also play a formation, Randy, going in on Loppy here. Also play a formation that suits the group of players that you currently have got to your disposal. Rhonda and Tony Tansi, thanks for having you guys in here. Let's read your comment. Right, I think I would take Potter, as he won 3 promotions and the Svenska Cupen in Östersund, leading them to 2017-18 UEFA Europa League knockout stage. Back to basics might be what we need. Did you grab that off Wikipedia? If not, that is fantastic knowledge. I knew it was at Östersund, obviously, because they did well in the Europa League against Arsenal, I believe. Didn't they beat Arsenal a few years ago? But I know he did very well there, and they've fallen off the cliff since he left. Old fans being replaced by new breed that don't realise how things have changed. What I would say on Graham Potter, though, what I would say is, clearly did a fantastic job at Brighton, but he got lost at Chelsea. He got lost. The big club that is Chelsea kind of swallowed him up and spat him out. And is it too kind of harsh to judge him on that? Possibly, because we've seen other managers do the exact same thing. But it is worrying when a big London club like Chelsea comes in and spits up the manager, and he kind of goes out with a whimper. And I know there was a lot of like, you know, I'm an advocate for mental health, and I don't want anyone to have their life threatened or whatnot. But, you know, when you're in like one of your press conferences saying you fear for your life because you're getting death threats and things like that, like, it's a weakness that kind of breeds into the rest of the football club, and your manager is the main spokesperson for the club in a way. So you don't really want to see any weakness coming from him. And I don't want to say that's weak. It feels incredibly harsh, but I don't know if Graham Potter is the guy that takes West Ham to the next level, or if he takes us further down. On the what I've seen of him, I would actually say it's the latter, and he'll probably get, you know, I don't think he'd do necessarily any better than Lopetegui, but I'd be happy to be proven wrong. And if Lopetegui, the experiment, doesn't work, then Graham Potter on a 6-month deal, which he's reportedly happy to take, could be a good appointment for West Ham. Troj, old fans being replaced by a new breed that don't realise how things have changed. Yeah, but I don't think you can judge people too much on that. You know, it's, you are what you are when you were born, you know, just like yourself, Troj. I imagine the generation before you, football was probably consumed in a slightly different way. Whereas now, you know, like, you know, you look at teenagers now, they're not even necessarily fan of football teams. Like, you know, like, what is it, Gen X, Y, or whatever. Really going into my background here. If anyone doesn't know, I actually work in social media and football media and the data behind sports. So I do a lot of stuff like that. But football fans nowadays, or like younger football fans, definitely coming into the football game at a young age, are necessarily fans. They're fans of football players as opposed to fans of football teams. So I don't necessarily want to say the way they're consuming the game is necessarily right or wrong, but they're consuming it in a different way and in a different kind of platform as well, where they're much more accustomed to vertical media as opposed to like more traditional, you know, your 16:9 or your 9:16, I should say. So I'm intrigued to see what the next generation of football is, but I do think football needs to evolve a little bit in a way, and try to keep its roots where it can. You know, I feel like I watch a lot of non-league football. Like I occasionally go to the odd hashtag game, or I go to Tooting and Mitcham a lot as well, because they do that £6 jerk chicken down there, which is unreal. I'd recommend that to anyone. But yeah, like you do go to those kind of games, and it is a different experience comparatively to what the Premier League more kind of refurbished product is nowadays. This has got very deep here, Troj, mate. But I don't want to say necessarily old fans are being replaced by a new breed, but old fans are getting older. Newer fans are being born, and they're coming into the sport. And I don't necessarily want to slight them as a result of when they were born or whatnot. I don't think they're any more or any less of a fan than what someone who's 50 years old and has supported West Ham for 50 years is I think they're just consuming the game in a different way. And I think that's just a societal thing, you know. He didn't build on a win against Newcastle with the Leicester defeat, so it's hard to have belief. I don't think you're wrong there, Mark, actually. I actually look at that. I think ultimately the performance against Wolves was much better. And I know Wolves are a lesser side than Newcastle, but Newcastle did enough to win that game. And I think us winning that game kind of papered over many cracks. Isak could have had a hat-trick in the first half. He just didn't take his chances on the day. People just can't afford it, even if they wanted any more, mate. That's true. Panorama National League, that's more achievable. Go down the Orient. Yeah, I've been there a few times as well. I'm like one stop from Leighton on the tube, so one of my best mates lives there as well. So I've been meaning to get down there this season. I've been this year. I read a story about Potter when he was at Ostersund. Great team harmony, but yes, cut and paste from Wikipedia. Yes, I agree with you, but the magnifying glass of the Premier League is a lot more intensified than the Swedish, the Swedish top division. And I'm not saying he doesn't have the kind of the chops or the stones to cut it at a big club. He's done well at Brighton, but I think the performance he put in at Chelsea, regardless of that club being a bit of a circus at times, I think was a bit questionable. Here we go. It's conspiracy hour. The only reason for Graham Potter being linked to West Ham is that Karen Brady husband Paul Pescalado. Pesky Salido. Is it Pesky Salido? Tell me if I'm on there. Knows him, which is the main reason why he's linked. I know they're ex-teammates, mate, for sure. Barry Clark. At least the players will understand Potter and can't be worse than Loppy. Interesting. Moyes failed at United, Sunderland and Sociedad, and we were told we shouldn't have got rid. Don't write Potter off. Interesting. Luke, only issue I would rather go outside the box and look abroad for our coach than go Prem experience all the time, mate, as we appoint Lopetegui with Prem experience and it's been a disaster. I think we should bring Potter. I think we should be bringing in Potter if Chelo gets the sack. Okay, interesting. Right, I want to talk about an individual at West Ham. This is the last question for tonight, guys, but we'll do this for another 5-10 minutes for sure. What I want to know is Jarrod Bowen a legend at West Ham? I want to hear your thoughts on this one. Now, again, Trode, you might have an opinion on this one, mate, because it seems like you've been a West Ham fan for a long time. I think fans of a certain generation, you know, like my dad's generation, for example, obviously a big West Ham fan, may have different opinions on this. I think personally, any player that scores a cup-winning goal in a final for the football club writes their name in folklore. And I will forever be grateful to Jarrod Bowen scoring that goal in the last minute against Fiorentina in Prague. And I think that writes him into the history books. And I think for me, he's already a West Ham legend. He's now obviously the West Ham captain. And as much as things haven't been going well this year, he has picked up in big moments, he's picked himself up in big moments. Like again, that against Wolves the other day, scored a genuine class goal. And now, obviously, I think the rest of the football media world, like they always do, whenever someone does something well for West Ham, it is always can they play the level above? And I think he would be capable of playing at a higher level every year. I think, you look at Champions League football, for example, I don't think there's any reason why he couldn't be playing that every year. So I think in terms of the quality, he's probably one of the best West Ham players that I've seen. Another incredible signing for the football club. You look at where he came from, where he started, very humble beginnings, and West Ham do have a lot of those stories where we sign these players from lower divisions and they come through and prove themselves and take themselves to the next level. We saw it with Mikel Antonio, for example. So for me, he's definitely a legend. But I'm just looking at the comments now, and I can see a few different responses. So let's have a look. Mark, yes, he has to be. Bowen is royalty at West Ham. That is the kind of statement I could definitely agree with. Troj, Bowen, sure. Stuart, I love this. I've been a West Ham supporter for 44 years. Yes, I think he should be a legend, but not a captain. It's an interesting point. I don't think too many fans would necessarily disagree with you. I think the problem is I don't think there's many clear candidates in the squad for who should be the captain. I mean, if it's not Jarrod Bowen, then the most senior player in the squad is probably Aaron Cresswell. And Aaron Cresswell's due to leave at the end of the season. You probably wouldn't give it to him. You could maybe, I would have said James Ward-Prowse if he hadn't gone on loan. I would have actually said James Ward-Prowse to start last season before we give it to Kurt Zouma. So if it's not him, I mean, you could give it to Max Tillman, but he's a new signing at the football club. I wouldn't necessarily want to give it to Areola or Fabianski. I don't want to give it to Soufal or Souček. Don't necessarily want to give it to Alvarez. I don't think he's been putting in good enough performances. Emerson, no. So you look around the squad, and I don't know who it could be. Lucas Paquetá could not be the captain of West Ham. It's Aaron Cresswell, really. And it's like Aaron Cresswell's leaving at the end of the year. So if it's not Jarrod Bowen, I don't know who it is. I don't know how many clear candidates there are in this football club. Because I think that's just there. But I think maybe at the end of the season, if Jarrod Bowen doesn't want it anymore, you could maybe give it to a Max Tillman. I just think Jarrod Bowen is probably the most decorated West Ham player, clearly, but also probably one of the most seasoned players in the dressing room. He's getting a bit older now. I know he's still in his 20s, but I don't know who else you'd give it to. 7-year contract speaks volumes. Not wrong there, mate. Barry, interesting one. Not yet. If he was to become our highest goal scorer, he would be after that winning goal in Europe. Then he would definitely. Oh, come on, Barry. I think you're being arsed there, mate. Scored the winning goal plus commitment. I couldn't agree more. Luke saying, gotta be. I understand. Randy's talking about the manager still. Let's have a little read. I understand Luke not having a go. It's just I want to be different and appoint someone that is not in the Premier League, as it would be different, mate. That's all. This is why I don't like Paqueta or Kudus. They aren't committed. Bowen legend, not there yet, but he's on his way. Neil, interesting. Legends for me are players like Moore, Hurst and Bonds and Brooking, but Bowen will go down as a legend too if he keeps playing like this. I agree with you, Mark, but you got to go a hell of a lot. You have to go back many years. And I've met Trevor Brooking. Like I love Trevor Brooking. I think he's slightly before my time. I was born in 92. So a lot of these players I didn't actually get to see. We're talking about going back to the 60s to see, Hurst, Bonds and Bobby Moore. I don't have that. I don't have the luxury of being able to do that. So I look at, candidates of being, the next generation of West Ham legends. We clearly don't have players of that caliber because none of them have lifted a World Cup, for example. But I think in terms of players that have done it in a West Ham shirt over the last maybe 10, 15 years, it's people like Mark Noble. Mark Noble, is he a West Ham legend? Played his entire career at the club. For me, yes. I think Jarrod Bowen came here earlier in his career, scored the winning goal in a cup final. I mean, what more have you got to do for the club? He's even been named, club captain. He's married, Danny Dyer's daughter. Like, he's as East End as you can go now. So I think he's definitely, for me, he has to be a West Ham legend. I just don't understand. I know he's not. He's never going to be Bobby Moore. He's never going to be Jeff Hurst or Billy Bonds. I get that, or Trevor Brooking, but he's got to be up there, surely. Not yet, but when he holds the FA Cup this season, then yes, love West Ham since 1968 and many great players, but only a few legends. That's a good point. And that was an interesting thing that I heard about Di Canio. People were calling Di Canio a cult hero at the football club and not a legend. And I don't know if I agree with that. So it'd be interesting to hear what you guys think. Yes, Brian, what he did in a Conference League is a legend, and his captaincy is still a work in progress as it's not been plain salience with his captaincy role at the moment. But he'll get there. Souček, Bowen, let's fill the team with people who want this to be their home. And the last one, I love Bowen, and he's a legend, but he'll have to become our highest goal scorer and stay at West Ham, not doing a Rice and leaving. And here we go. I've got to flag this one. Di Canio turned down Man United transfer. Got to be worth something. Well, it's a fair point. Right, guys. I am off. This has been the wrap up with myself. It's always good talking to you guys every Wednesday. I'm here every week at 9 p.m. If you ever want to talk West Ham outside the show, then I am on Twitter on all socials at Jamie Talks. Yeah, let me know if you guys want to start, joining the show, or if you want me to start getting guests on and whatnot. I haven't had any guests on here in a long while, so it'll be good to bounce a few things off other people and whatnot. But as I said, it's been a pleasure talking to you all tonight. Thank you very much for joining, and I will catch you next week at 9 p.m. Love. See you later. Yeah, hit likey, subscribe, and all that jazz. Thanks to Russ and the gang for having me on the West Ham Network, as always, and I'll see you all later.